But yeah, I was like, well, of course, like the thing I can really dunk on is the experience of Black Americans in the 1950s. And I'm trying to find all the stats and I look at their marriage rates and I'm like, oh, okay, well, in the 1950s, 64% of Black women were married, roughly comparable to white women.
Kids born out of wedlock were half the white rate. Today, at only 5%. We're at the white percent born out of wedlock was 10%. It's like
Yeah, but Black infants born out of wedlock soared to 77.3%. Like, I mean, it's obviously there were horrible things about like pre-civil rights, but okay, so like fertility is worse, out of wedlock births are worse, mental health is worse, even if wealth too. In median
wow.
Black household income is 58% of white households, which is unchanged since 1953.
I heard her say all this and I was like, this can't actually be true, right? Like, this doesn't sound true to me. So I decided to start Googling it. And oh my God, it's so much worse than I thought. If you look at this graph by the Washington Post, which is looking at median household wealth adjusted for inflation, since the 1950s, white wealth has gone up about 3x. Black wealth is approximately the same as it was in the 1950s.
So also, like, I was looking at that, I was like, oh my God, I've been lied to about the 50s. Like, oh, it was so much more expensive, except, well, we spent like 15% of our income on clothes. So I don't know.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Malcolm. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today because we are going to be talking about the 1950s. And obviously, we enjoyed tossing rotten vegetables at the 1950s. We point out how trad wives are both unsustainable and a progressive conspiracy. We point out how sexually debauched they were in the 1950s.
Hold on. I gotta make a few notes on these things for people who haven't seen these episodes. Specifically, what we mean is that the trad wife phenomenon, as it is practiced today, is more of a cargo cult than representative of how people actually lived in the 1950s.
Well, and before the real family format that has existed for thousands of years is what's called the corporate family, which is more an extended family group of both
right.
people and unrelated
And that
colleagues.
the modern trad wife is more downstream of BDSM culture.
And you don't even know, Malcolm, but this is trending now online because there are these trad wives who are now, I don't remember what they call them, but there's one woman who calls it the princess treatment and then or experience or something like that. And then there's this other one who literally wears a BDSM collar, but calls it like like she thinks that it's a conservative Christian thing, but she had literally bought this collar, a day collar, I think she calls it,
A day color.
to signal her subservience to her husband, not realizing that literally she purchased this collar from a BDSM site, and it's so amazing, and the internet's laughing like crazy. But anyway, yeah, it's such a thing, and it's showing up again because it's a thing.
No, well, it's so funny because a lot of these people were so hidden from that they don't realize that it's like, no, these words you're using did not come from the 1950s. They literally came from BDSM culture. Like, this is not the things that you're buying, these styles that you're adopting.
Not to kink shame or anything. It's just it's not like the traditional correct way to do family.
Yeah, so I think that's always funny to get into, but continue.
Right. So, as much as we like to dunk on the 1950s, there were absolutely major elements of it that rocked, including affordability, employment, quality of life, social stability. There were even some commonly highlighted shortcomings of the 1950s that are maybe not as short as I thought they were previously.
Yeah. Oh, and hold on. I should also note, for people who haven't seen our episode on the 1950s being debauched, it also was in many ways, way more sexually debauched than modern times.
Yeah.
Where we point out the prevalence within literature of the period and within studies run during the period of young male mutual masturbation and the prevalence of nudity, like group showers and stuff like that people don't do anymore, and the prevalence
Oh,
of
but it was no homo group showers. You know, it was like people were based enough to not insinuate too much or read too much into
well,
it.
yeah, they didn't see it as gay to like jack off your friend in the 1950s. They were like, yeah, you
Yeah,
should.
you're just helping out a friend. Come on,
And I
man.
love people were like, oh, that was like those studies were debunked. And I was like, bro, if you have actually read a lot of literature from people who grew up in the 1950s that describe like underground culture, what it was really like, you will very frequently find stories of mutual masturbation among males. I have not read a single like non-gay story where that happens in modern times. I don't have a single friend who has admitted to me, oh yeah, I did this thing that
Yeah, I
just
think even our totally straight doesn't go that far.
yeah.
So
Continue.
anyway, I want to make the argument basically that okay, yes, a lot of things about the 50s either totally misunderstood or actually sucked. But there are a lot of things that were great, but I have zero respect for anyone who pines after the 50s, and I will explain why. But basically, midwits crave the 1950s
Well, it's
and
because you believe
geniuses
it's all
live the
recreational.
1950s.
The
So,
reason she doesn't care is she thinks that you can remake everything that was good in the 1950s within the modern day.
exactly, that's my point.
And
Yeah.
I'll push back. So make your argument.
Yeah. Well, so let's go over what's good about the 1950s, right? So, housing and basic goods, the cost of living was dramatically lower. And so that is a clear winner. Housing was affordable, with the average home costing around $15,000 compared to over $200,000 today. Plus, gasoline, food, and cars were also cheaper relative to income, making it easy for a single income to support a family and afford a
I
home
thought
and
I
car.
thought food was dramatically more
I'll
expensive.
walk you through this. I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
But actually, we recently did a video on AI and social class. And in that video, we show this 1957 video on social class in America that shows the lives of a lower class American, a middle class American, and then an upper class American. And there's this one scene where they show the the rundown lower class house.
David's father is Michael Benton, an unskilled factory worker who has a meager education. Mr. Benton rents the upper floor of a two-family house in a rundown section of town.
In the
Yeah.
video. And it's like it looks so nice.
Oh
So
yeah, if it
also,
was in LA, it looked like the houses would cost a few million in LA.
I know it looked like a $2 million Bay Area house. So yeah, that like only the wealthiest could possibly live in these days. So I get, that has gotten we have problems there. We have problems with housing. Plus, the median American family had 30% more purchasing power at the end of the decade than at the beginning. And the dollar's buying power was much greater. So college tuition was low enough that student debt was basically it wasn't a thing. So as much as even like the GI Bill may have helped a lot of guys, and this was something that enabled people who fought in World War II to basically go to college for free. For those who aren't familiar with it, it almost wasn't necessary because school was just affordable. Another element was that employment was it was cush. Like there was this really short-lived period where it just like getting a job seemed incredibly easy. And it was at the time unemployment was super low, about 4.5%. And low in a way that was like legitimately low. Cause I think now people are juicing the numbers in all sorts of ways, pretending that people who are one, not counting unemployed people who've given up and all these other factors. So yeah, actually low unemployment. And there were tons of jobs in manufacturing and industry. You didn't need a high school diploma to have a job. The GI Bill that I mentioned earlier helped millions of veterans access higher education and then buy homes. So there was both economic growth and social mobility. And incomes went up. Average family incomes rose from 3,300 in 1950s to 5,400 by the end of that decade. So 1950 to 1959, it went up from 3,300 to 5,400. Keep in mind that wages have been stagnant, and then of course housing and education, childcare, a whole bunch of other things these days have risen more than income. So it's pretty bad. And then there was also union power, so labor unions, I think, were a little more common then. You didn't have Amazon constantly
But
fighting.
Simone, the economic argument for the 1950s, I've always found to be uniquely stupid.
Yeah, because I
So
mean, boomers did absolutely get, and like the greatest generation got a
yeah,
boost
but
from this.
the only reason why the 1950s appeared so wealthy in the United States is because the other world center of economic production had been
Mhm.
completely devastated by a world
Uh,
war. And that basically meant, like, okay, imagine
well,
if,
Europe's ramping up for World War III. Maybe there's hope, Milk.
yeah, imagine if the US went around and destroyed every factory in China and every factory in Europe, and then they came back and over the next 10 years was like, isn't it great how much money you can earn at an American factory job? And it's like, well, no, that's not exactly a replicable scenario was in the modern day. And that wasn't caused by the culture of the 1950s. That
Yeah,
was caused by, and this is why I
it was
think
just chance. It was happenstance.
calling out Tradwise as a cargo cult phenomenon is such an apt comparison because
Mm.
what created the economic benefits that made if you're not familiar with the cargo cults, these were Aboriginal people in islands who during the war had troops stationed in the area that would give them food. And so they had so much wealth from their perspective, like food and material supplies and technology. During that period, they tried to bring it back by reenacting scenes that they remember from that time period. So they'll build like planes out of like sticks and runways, and then do all the things like their religious ceremonies of the signs that they would make to call down the planes. And it was the very same war that led to the
cargo cult. The dummy plane is at the other end, the control tower, waiting for some plane to land on their strip, attracted by the bamboo model.
We laugh at these Aboriginals doing this, and then we see, conservative influencers doing the exact same thing to recreate the economic situations created by that exact same war that had nothing to do with the, I don't
maybe
think
this is why many of them are also so pro-Russia. They're like, come on, guys.
you go
Do it.
create that. And so you could say, well, if unions were stronger, we'd have all this. No, unions worked in the 1950s because we didn't have any competition.
Yeah, and there
Okay?
was no outsourcing. Like, yeah, people didn't have the option to just turn to something else because the union was formed. That's
If
very true.
unions get stronger in the United States, we simply get outcompeted by countries with less union regulation.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is exactly what happened. I mean, I think that's why a lot of companies were like, okay, screw you. I'm going to do my
Yeah, that's why the automobile
manufacturing. And
left the U.S. in a
yeah,
big part, and they don't realize who killed you. I love it when people are like, "Oh, well, we had such good jobs because of the unions," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't have those jobs anymore. So why do you think that happened?" This is really happening in Hollywood right now, where the union, the writers union or something, decided to make some big stupid push, and
basically
eventually,
everything in Hollywood is unionized. It is riddled with unions, and that has ossified and made the industry so financially unviable and bogged down that they're just completely being trounced now. Yeah, they're pretty much
eventually
over.
people, and you can read lots of stories about this. The companies are just leaving Hollywood, and they're not
Yeah,
doing business in Hollywood anymore.
yeah,
Even the creative types, because they're just like, we can't deal with this anymore.
yeah,
So I don't think that, no, you can't bring back the economic prosperity. Unions worked in Hollywood when Hollywood had a natural monopoly, i.e., it wasn't easy to produce films in a
yeah,
disparate region of locations.
yeah.
Now it is, and even
Mobility
easier
changes things for
with
sure.
AI.
Yeah.
So unions only work when you have a captive market. When you don't have a captive market, unions have the opposite effect.
None
They
of this
kill
changes the fact that for the people at the time, it felt pretty freaking good.
felt
But we
pretty good.
can't recreate that, and I'm with you on that.
But
But
I'm gonna actually point out, I mean, I go into the actual economics of the food, because my understanding is that if you actually look at cost of living of today versus the 1950s, it was actually lower today than in the 1950s for your average person.
yeah, I will get into that. I'll get into that.
Go.
But I'm not. It's later. This is my
It's
episode.
later.
We
Okay,
get to do it
go.
my way because this is get out of my office. You let me cook, okay? But it's another element of this that was, I mean, it was obviously tied to economic growth and whatnot, but quality of life and social stability were both better. And this is one of those things where I think it should start to become apparent that you can totally recreate this on a family or personal cultural level. But there was a perception of positive change, which we should totally have now. Material comforts were improving. The 1950s saw widespread adoption of new technologies, televisions, cars, home appliances, and these rapidly improved daily life. Like my grandmother was a French war bride. She grew up in France doing laundry with like washboards, and then she just was so freaking amazed when she got a washing machine. She just thought it was the coolest thing in the entire world. It blew her mind. And I don't think people realize just, how amazing that was for people, but also like how low tech their lives were even in the 50s when I don't know, when a washing machine is the thing that is the highlight of your year, do you really crave to go back to that period? But there was more community, relatively speaking, and social cohesion. There was a strong emphasis on social and community life. And this was the era of sending your kids out to play all afternoon until it was dinner time or the sunset, and then expecting them to come home and everything would be okay. And then, of course, there was that economic optimism, but also mental health and well-being were just better. It was normal to start a successful middle class life out of high school, whereas now we infantilize people like crazy. But yeah, I mean, in that social class video that I just referenced earlier, the middle class character in the video just gets a white collar job straight out of high school. I mean, can you imagine that happening commonly now? I mean, it's going to come back to that soon, which is great. And culture around mental health was better. Emotions were seen as harmful. And
I
I can
agree
give
with. I
you
think that it's the better way to deal with mental health.
I can give you a video clip of there's literally another one of those 1950s instructional videos where an instructor is connecting emotions to fire. It just is perfect. Like, yes.
Before men learned how to control fire and put it to work, it was man's greatest enemy. In much the same way, your emotions can be your own greatest enemy. Or under control, your emotions can make you healthier and happier and improve the lives of people around you. I think of fire in connection with emotions because when you become stirred up, when your emotions control your actions, it affects not only yourself, but the people around you.
And it did feel a lot more stable and predictable for people. And there were stronger community support networks. Also, clothing. They had Mad Men. We literally have Idiocracy. Like,
Right, but here's the thing. In 1950s, what it had in clothing,
yeah.
which by the way you can still wear if you want, it
Yeah.
lacked in food. If you have ever seen pictures of food from the 1950s,
Oh,
it
yes.
is
Let me send you some. Let me send you some. Okay, first I'm going to send you just pictures pictures of clothing. Just so because I think it's been a while since we've watched Idiocracy, but like when you look at clothing from Idiocracy, it might as well just be clothing from today. Like we were
oh my
walking
god,
around
it
Walmart this
literally
morning.
is just
Isn't
like
this literally just what you saw this morning at Walmart?
oh my god.
Right?
Oh my
Yeah.
god, we actually dress are not you and me, but everyone else.
And
Yeah,
we
like
like
people are
walked
like, "Why don't you
through
dress
that
like
at
everyone
Walmart.
else?" And I was
Doesn't
like,
this look
"Well,
like the clothing that was on the racks?
it is actually in the 1950s, so sharp.
I know, it's so sharp. But yeah, I'm gonna send you pictures of 1950s food because
By the way, people
absolutely,
may not know this, but I used to always wear a suit and tie.
yeah,
Um,
you look great.
and people could say, "Why did you stop always wearing a suit and tie?" And it's because it made me look younger, like too young. Like I look like a kid when I wear a suit and tie. And so as it's funny, many of our viewers, they take us out to be, and this is the first time in my life where I've really been surprised by this. I think
Yeah,
like older relative to them than we are. I think many of them perceive themselves as younger than they actually are. I remember one of them was like on our episode on 4chan, they were like, "Oh, this is such like a boomer's take on 4chan." And I'm like, "Whoa, hold on here." Like my generation was the generation that was using 4chan as it was becoming culturally relevant and a thing. You have only lived in the territory we built. Like 4chan isn't some modern edgy thing. 4chan is my generation's, my college, my high school. Like, what are you talking about, man?
well,
Um,
anyway, now you're sounding like a boomer. Okay, boomer. But like I just sent you a picture of 1950s party food. And what we're looking at is a spread of like sliced bread, some like meat
God,
patties.
that looks disgusting.
There are two cheese sandwiches, and then there's a weird vat of red stuff and some cheese. Then I sent a picture of a very basic modern charcuterie board, which includes dragon fruit, sliced pear, pomegranate, fig jam with toasted pita bread slices, a container of mixed nuts and dried berries, grapes, skewered oh, and star fruit, of course. So there's all these exotic fruits that have been imported from all
So,
around the
yeah,
world.
well, I mean, a lot of them are things that you might be surprised used to be rarer, like pineapples or bananas, or
Yeah,
even
like those things you didn't get them. You would
even
get.
just the ability to transport things that you do get, like apples. You wouldn't get those all year round in the 1950s.
Oh, but here, let me show you a great example of apples in 1950s cuisine. Check out this beautiful. I don't know if it's dessert or if it's a savory dish. Check it out. We're
Yellow
looking at
with
some.
shrimp inside.
Yes, there's green jello with shrimp inside. There's maybe cottage cheese in the center of the bunt shaped jello thing, and then some apple tastefully arranged around the side. Doesn't that look yummy, Malcolm?
Oh my god,
But
that's just
if your appetite isn't completely surging now, let me show you this amazing 1950s casserole highlighting the the beauty of the hot dog. And what we're basically looking
oh,
at is some
that
kind
is
of
horrifying. Oh my
it looks
god.
it looks kind of like an ode to brutalist architecture with
So for
coleslaw on
anybody
top.
who can't see because they're watching this on audio, they cut hot dogs in half and then put them on like the outside of a cake of some sort.
With coleslaw on top. Yeah, so it's like I think it's a casserole, but it's like a tall casserole with coleslaw on top.
What gets
And
me is even the simplest of dishes they seem to have been unable to
no,
cook.
no,
Like,
no. This was a fancy dish. No, this was
no,
you showing off,
no, what I
Malcolm.
mean is, like, you're like, well, certainly at least they can make good steak or a good burger, and it's like, no. Apparently, somehow they couldn't, because I've seen pictures of burgers and steaks from the 1950s, and they look terrible. They look like a school cafeteria food.
Yeah.
Like, and people are like, why was food so bad in the 1950s? A few core reasons. They had only just figured out refrigeration,
Mhm.
so they were overusing it in areas they probably shouldn't have been,
Well,
like Jello.
and yeah, also it was really, they didn't have cold chain like supply chains where you have refrigerated trucks and then refrigerated warehouses. And so it was really hard to have things like frozen meat or other things or fruits or flowers from far away, fish being taken over. So when you had vegetables, it was quite often canned vegetables or canned meat. The canning was way more common for like the major source of the food you were eating.
Yeah,
And then, of course, there was less globalization, so you weren't getting these foreign things imported from far away. I
you
mean,
weren't getting.
you had apples because they were domestically produced.
You often couldn't get, I mean, even my dad, grew up after the 1950s. Many stories about him first encountering things like sushi or curry or
Yeah.
in media, you'll often see jokes about how bad white people food is. And I think within modern times, we can look at this and say, oh, what a silly little racist joke. But in actuality, when you go to these historic examples and you look at these pictures, you're like, oh, wow, before we started adopting ingredients and cooking techniques from other cultures, this food does actually look pretty awful.
Next ingredient. I have this in my home all the time now, chili jam. It's
What I tell you, it's not Asian ingredient. What he doing with chili jam? Let's see.
brilliant for cooking. It's got heat, but it's also got the sweetness, and it's going to kind of glaze.
Oh, no, no,
and
no,
help-
no, 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 no. Putting jam in rice. This is disgusting. Who put jam? First of all, what is chili jam? Uncle Roger knows fresh chili, chili oil, chili flake. Never heard of chili jam. Is this how you trick white people to eating chili? You give them fresh chili, they go,
No, no, no. I don't actually like chili.
give them chili jam, and they go,
Oh,
Other things that we might consider a normal part of daily life.
Yeah. Yeah, that these were very foreign, exciting things. Also, our aesthetic standards, and this is something that some viewers of this podcast have brought up to me multiple times. It's just like the aesthetic standards we hold to our interior decoration and to our food are just so insanely high now. So I'm going to send you two pictures of just one is a sort of a standard 1950s birthday party. The kids are wearing like clearly homemade paper hats. It looks like they were made from like
send this to me.
newspaper or something. There's like a plastic tablecloth and paper cups and a chip bowl or whatever, and like someone's grandmother's in a corner smiling, looking like she's just the best host ever. Like clearly this is an impressive party for a middle class family. And then I'm also sending a picture of Shirley Temple's birthday party. She's cutting a much larger cake, but I'm going to be honest with you, it looks kind of like a botched homemade cake with that
It,
someone
it
put like.
looks like what the standard of what I would get from my local grocery store.
Well, no. Let me actually show you the standards of our local area. So I'm just going to show you a picture of the cake counter from Wegmans, which is a local
Okay.
a local grocery store here. Now we're looking at perfectly executed fruit tarts, cakes, elaborately made cakes to look like cups of hot chocolate. This is the future. And then let me show you just a picture. I just chose a random local bakery in Collegeville in this case. It's from the Collegeville Cakery, I think. This is just one of their class, and I took this from Google reviews too. And you can see it's in someone's house. Like there's like sheets in the background. This is
Okay.
not a commercial photo.
Wow, that's an
Yeah.
impressive cake.
This cake ain't got nothing on Shirley Temple's cake. We're now looking at a lopsided recreation of the Sleeping Beauty cake from the Disney movie that has like all these crazy stacked layers held up by a broom. Our standards today for food are incredibly high and incredibly luxurious.
Well,
And
I mean, I'd even say in women. I think many people who haven't watched 1950s movies forget that women of the 1950s are just not very attractive. I don't know
well, the
what
movie
it,
stars look great, but also they're highly airbrushed. People weren't nearly as overweight and obese.
No,
So I would actually argue that
push
like
back.
women
I'd
were
say
more
that
attractive because they were not as unhealthy.
many people would call 1950s movie stars pretty mid by modern standards.
Yes, but the average person, like when I look at vintage colorized footage of the 1950s, yeah, I mean, what we have now is a bunch of twos and threes compared to that moving around on the streets, and what was strolling on the streets in the 50s and 60s was a bunch of fives and sixes. So I'm going to push back on that. And a lot of that was the clothing, but also I need to point out that in the 1950s, people spent 9 to 14% of their annual income just to buy fewer than 25 garments per year. But these were investment
Wait, hold
pieces.
on. Not sorry. Go over that statistic again. That's pretty crazy.
9 to 14% of annual income
To get how many garments?
to get fewer than 25 garments per year.
Wow.
Yeah, and most clothing was made in the US. It was good-looking clothing. You didn't have a lot of it. But yeah, people look good because they spent a lot. And I think this is one of those things where people are like, "Oh man, like the 1950s was so affordable." You want to guess what percentage of annual income we spend on our clothing now, Malcolm? For approximately 70 garments a year, 70? What do
Okay,
you think?
I'm gonna guess like 1%, 2%.
3%, around 3%. Come on, but for 70 garments though.
But I mean,
So,
well, and this is for everyone. If you look at families who are being intentional about it,
mhm.
I'd be almost certain our family spends less than
Oh, for
0.5%.
sure, because we're really careful. We have our kid uniforms. I just bought probably all of our kids' clothing for the next foreseeable future because on Prime Day, a bunch of Amazon Basics and kid sizes came out in like our family uniform. So like the
Almost
black polo
everything we
shirts,
wear,
like jeans.
everything I wear is Amazon Basics. This shirt is Amazon Basics. My jeans are Amazon Basics. My wife.
And no sponsorship. Come on, Amazon. We don't
Yeah,
do sponsored
I want
content.
an Amazon Basics sponsorship. I'm
I know.
Mr.
Yeah, that if we could just get that in Coors Light, it would be perfect. It'd be so natural. But yeah, one of the arguments that I do want to make here is that as much as people butthurt about the 50s being affordable, we actually spent a lot more in the 50s on certain things and we spend a lot less now. But here's the thing that got me when I was doing research
Well,
for this
no,
episode.
I'd
This is
also point out that travel was basically impossible in the 1950s. For you, people spent, even with it being more expensive in the 1950s, they spent a smaller percent of their budget on it simply because it was inaccessible for most people.
Yeah,
Outside
so
of
travel was unusual in the 1950s in general. It was typically domestic, it was car based, and it was not luxurious. Airfare, if you did do it, was 6% of annual income. Now airfare is less than 1% today. And recent surveys indicate that the average American family spends about 10% of their annual income on travel, with some families spending up to 15%, whereas a typical 2-week family vacation by car in the 1950s would cost around $300 to $400, and that was like only 7 to 10% of annual income for a middle class family taking a single significant trip a year, a 2-week trip though. And families who traveled less or took shorter trips would only spend 2 to 5%. So yeah,
and
we
the
definitely spend
vacations
less
sucked.
on.
I've heard stories about them from my dad. They would get in a car and they'd drive for like 14 hours to like some ocean house, and they'd
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Your family used to drive from Texas to the Jersey Shore every summer, right? And just kind of camp out
yeah,
there for a
there's like a
weekend.
multi-day drive. I can imagine miserable when you don't keep in mind they didn't have phones to read in the car. They didn't have
Exactly. Yeah.
you couldn't read a book because you get car sick.
You would, as they call it these days, raw dog it.
Yeah, raw dogged it for multiple day journeys.
That's yeah, without this was before air conditioning. This was when you had to roll down your windows with a crank.
I mean, I
I've
remember how much it transformed travel to have screens in front of you.
Oh my,
To be able
the
to
luxury. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, throughout my entire childhood, there were no screens. But so yeah, I mean, so if we want to talk about affordability, it is true for too, like to the point of housing, that housing costs were more, and we can't fix that because in the 1950s, American families spent, we'll say, 17 to 22% of their annual income on housing, and now the percentage of income spent on housing has risen to 25 to 30% for most American households. But given that 9 to 14% of income was spent on clothing in the 50s, whereas 3% is spent today, that alone in savings covers the cost of increased housing. Like it's super unfair that people are like, oh, it was too expensive, because now we're spending so much less on other things.
and if
And
people are
yes,
like, well, why do clothes cost so much less today? It's in part because we did do the outsourcing thing.
exactly, yeah.
We
The
benefit
same
from the
reason why we don't have unions. Yeah.
Yeah, I want a starving child in China making my shirts, not some starving child in America.
Yeah, well, America has better, support services for the starving children. And there's SNAP and EBT and like all the those, and free healthcare in most states for children at low incomes. Whereas in China, they need the income. Okay, let them have it. And also, like, there's a lot of other sort of misleading things. I feel like I'm being gaslit about the 50s. Like, technically, gasoline and cars were less expensive in the 50s, but it's not the full picture because overall transportation today doesn't meaningfully cost more. In the 50s, American families spent around 15% of their household income on transportation, which included cars and public transport. But in recent years, families spend 15 to 18%, so only as much as 2%, well, more of their household income on transportation. Plus, you don't need any more to drive to rent a movie or get daily groceries or talk with your friends because now we have bigger refrigeration units. We have deep freezers if we want them that are more widely available. You can get bulk food delivery. You like it used to be that to do anything, to see a friend, to talk to a friend, you had to drive somewhere, especially if you weren't in a city. So yeah, I just don't think things are being adequately presented. And also, to your point about food, if you still prepare it yourself, especially in 1950s style, like if you're eating canned vegetables and hot dog towers.
I'd also point out that people romanticize the gender relationship in the 1950s.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, as a man, it was so great, when women. Okay, so first of all, in the 1950s, women spanking their wives was pretty normalized. Can you
Yeah.
imagine having to spank your wife, like outside of a sexual context?
Yeah.
It just seems like such an effort. Like you have what you treat your wife like an additional child. How does that make your life easier or better? Like, do
Yeah,
you
it's
actually
hard for me
want?
to imagine that it actually happened that much. I feel like it happened in the media as like a cute thing,
It
but
happened in movies, so
yeah, it
clearly it was
happened.
happening in people's house. It was not treated as like a, "Oh my god, I can't believe he did that." It was like, that's a normal part of being married. So, clearly it was happening.
Guess maybe I don't know. I just don't think most men
And
wanted to
and
bother.
then women, you had this big problem in the 1950s of all these housewives being on all these drugs. Um,
Benzos, yes,
Benzos
yes,
to get through
yes.
the day. So what? I've got this drugged up, childlike wife who I need to spank
You need to spank. Not
to keep
ideal.
in line.
Yeah.
I prefer that my wife just does this stuff herself. And I think that people also, as men, over romanticize the concept of the wife just staying at home and doing all the childcare. I really prefer sharing childcare duties with my wife because I really like being around my kids.
I know. You'd be missing out if you were being a trad wife dad. And most of the families we know who are really, pronatalist, the men of the houses love spending time with their kids. But yeah, I mean, like
Yeah, like, yeah,
we
no more time with the kids for you. You just I can't even imagine, like, I love think about the world that we're entering today where you have more work from home, you have more gig work, you have more even if you're earning less and your earnings are not as stable, consider what your life would be like if you went every day to work at a factory all day long,
yeah.
and then you came home and you had a wife and some kids, and that was your interaction with them. And then on weekends you'd go to, I don't know, barbecues or something, which I wouldn't like doing anyway. I'd have to like talk
Yeah.
to people. It's so
Yeah.
funny parties, like children's parties today, because I go to them and other people in the comments, please tell me if this is your experience. None of the parents talk. All the parents just stand around looking awkwardly at their phones or something. And I remember when I was a kid and you had the children play stuff, the parents would do it so the parents could interact.
Yeah, we have video footage of it. Like, we have proof. The parents are hanging out and talking. Yeah.
Today, and I want Simone to go with me to one. If Simone never goes to any of this stuff because that's my responsibility, but I want her to go just for anthropological reasons, to just be like, take a separate car, just be there for 30 minutes so you can see what it's like, because it's weird.
I do kind of I should witness this because I find it
And
hard to
people can be
believe.
like, "Oh, that's horrible," but, the reality is I don't wanna talk to these people. I don't. I've got friends online who I'm better matched for, and I've got my wife at home and my kids.
Yeah, but still, my point remains that you can, if you want to, recreate this life. Like, education, sure, it's unsustainably expensive now, but it also can be circumvented with AI. And we talked about this at length in the AI and social class episode that we released. And same with employment. AI is going to wipe again away the need for university degrees. So we're getting back to that 50s, you can start right out of high school or even before scenario. And we're about to hit an age of major wealth opportunity for those who are willing to work for it, which is exactly how it was in the 50s. You still had to work for it to have upward social mobility. So don't think that people weren't working their butts off to get anywhere in the 50s, because they absolutely were. They worked really hard. And then this quality of life thing, this, oh, well, the 50s were this time of optimism and there was all this techno optimism and everything. You can absolutely unplug from negative media channels and you'll see things are actually getting better. And they're way better than they were in the 50s. Just look at those food pictures. And with mental health too, you can opt into better mental health. Stability and
With
predictably, if
real
you
estate,
thoughtfully own your objective function, like you know what your values and your life plan are and you live within your means, you can have a stable and predictable life. It's all these people who are trying to opt into a clearly unsustainable culture that they don't even own, like they haven't thoughtfully chosen it for themselves, who are living precariously.
well, and I point out a few things here. If you're
Yeah,
like, I want cheaper rent, right? Like that's what the 1950s had that I want. Well, you actually have options for that today. You can
totally.
go to a rural area and get a house. I mean, that's what we did. We got our house our house. If it was in the Bay Area, my God, what would it cost? Do you think
Like $10
13 million?
million dollars, at least.
13, and I would guess.
Maybe. Yeah.
But out here, it was less than half a million when we got it.
Mhm.
So like great house and everything like that. I mean, and now you might have to go further rural than we went, or you go to a developing country, which you couldn't easily do or live in the 1950s, and you can today.
Yeah, that is 100% an option. So yeah, I mean, you can live the 1950s fantasy. You just have to be intentional about it and be willing to break with mainstream norms, which shouldn't be hard given how toxic they are. But I mean, even better than that, you can literally live the techno optimist 1950s future. So you can live the fantasy that people had in the 1950s. Like you can have more sustainable marriages in which like both partners contribute professionally, and even the kids. You can have greater social mobility because at least if you ride the AI wave properly, and you can have way more luxury given modern tech. Plus, we need to really be grateful for all the medical advancements that were not available in the 1950s. Like keep in mind the first kidney transplant was in the 50s. That was experimental, and they were not like organ transplants in general were not widespread. We didn't have Ozempic, we didn't have advanced antibiotics, we didn't have modern chemotherapy or targeted therapies, no gene therapy, no IVF. So we would be childless and miserable. No statins, no cardiovascular medications that are anywhere close to what we have now. No modern imaging. So no PET scans, no CT scans, no MRIs. There was no endoscopy. So like you couldn't have a really simple surgery where they just kind of went in with a tiny precision cut. They just had to slice you all the way open. And I can't emphasize enough, like also like just advanced antibiotics. You only had some really simple stuff. So I just it's so bizarre to me that people crave this when you can have it. You can have the fantasy they wanted, and yet you are bitching about it. No, don't give me that.
I
Like live it.
what gets me is I think it's the culture of the 1950s that people want even the thing that people think was really working
Uh huh.
wasn't. They think, oh well, we had economic stability, which we only had because the rest of the world was destroyed at that time, which
Yeah.
cheesed our economy,
Yeah.
and so you can't really pine for it for those reasons. That's pining for something that you cannot recreate,
Yeah.
or they pine for it for, oh well, women back then really knew their place in a relationship, and I'm like, or you can find a woman who is in a modern context who is willing to build the type of relationship that you want to build, right? Like, and those women are out there. They're absolutely. Simone wasn't like, when I found, because there were a number of women I considered marrying before Simone, and not one of them did I have the issue of them being like progressive brain minded, or like, and they were all like progressive to some extent, right? Like, because back then I was a progressive, right?
So most highly educated women are progressive, and you pretty much
But none of
exclusively
them
looked.
were like, "Oh, I'm against, women having a different role than men, or I would expect X or Y." Like, I think what often men don't think about is many of the ways in which relationship norms have become more flexible benefit both parties,
Oh, absolutely.
not
Yeah.
just women.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if we were super rigid about it, you would have to do our taxes and finances.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
You
And
wouldn't
you would
be.
have had to muck out the sink this morning. Oh my God, Malcolm. Like, I'm used to mucking out drains, but the smell of this. I like almost vomited. It was, I don't know what was going on with it, but it was not good.
Hey, at least the drain cleaner worked.
I know that thing. They clean it out like a ramrod because it basically was. Family motto.
It was on a thing my family used to run called Crazy Water Crystals on the radio station. They'd say they'll clean you out like a ramrod.
Yeah, because what was it called? Healing Springs, Texas?
Crazy Water Mineral Wells, Texas.
Mineral Wells, Texas. Yeah, they
Mineral
had some kind of like retreat thing and product out of
I
Mineral
love that
Wells,
my
Texas.
family actually, that'd be a fun thing to bring back Crazy Water. I think that would do well with modern branding.
There's literally like we bought for your brother for his birthday. You can literally find on eBay Crazy Water Crystals memorabilia, like little pamphlets about it. You can buy model train
Well, because they
pieces.
owned almost the entire town. So they created basically a resort town like an Aspen before an Aspen, and
Yeah.
because you could commute to it from Dallas. This was before planes. When they owned almost everything in the town, is my understanding. And so it was like imagine of a Malcolm world, like a Hershey Park or something like
God.
that. Come and enjoy yourself at the wonderful crazy town for crazy people. I was looking up pictures of the town if you're watching this on audio, and the banner over the main street when you enter town says, "Welcome to the home of crazy," with crazy in giant wacky yellow font. And the big company looming in the background that the family owned was Crazy Well Water Company. And so I think, I've mentioned before, like that the backwoods culture or tradition that my family comes from really didn't like attempting to look pretentious or overly high status or overly like normalized, and vulgarity was seen as authenticating, like showing that you don't think that you're better than people. And this is very much the 1950s way of doing that, or the 1950s way of being Malcolm.
The mineral water there just gave you massive diarrhea. It was secure. That's where cleans you out like a ramrod came from. Like you just, I don't know, you took it and it was like a major, it just, everything came out. But sometimes you need that.
Cleans you out like a ram. That's the way you communicate with Texas audience, rural Texas audience.
It's great. It's
Cleans
perfect.
you out like a ramrod.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the thing is too, I love retrofuturism. And the funny thing is we have that. I mean, I was just talking with you yesterday about how I loved the fact that I heard our kids griping downstairs after bedtime, and I was just too exhausted from cleaning up after dinner and everything and making dinner to go down and figure it out what was going on. But I could drop in. I could just like get on my phone and drop in on the Alexa device. It was in their room playing them like sleep noises, and just be like, okay, guys, what's up? And then, so we negotiated what they wanted. Hugs. I was like, well, how about I sing you a song? And then what song? And I'm just like, this is the future. We live in the retro future environment. There's all these videos you can watch about the retro futuristic house, the house of the future. There were so many of those videos in the 1950s, advertising various things and the power of plastics. And while there's not an exact translation, and Elon Musk loves to quote his son Saxon, who once said, "Why does the future not look like the future? Or why does today not look like the future?" But it does. Like it's not an exact. We don't have flying cars, but that's because who wants to get a pilot license to get a car? Like that. You don't understand the air traffic control problems you would have with that. It's just not a practical solution. And so yeah, it bothers me. But I'm bothered by the fact that people aren't just living the type of 1950s they want. And this is also a really common complaint that we have about culture in general. Like people get really mad about, oh, like there's this culture and I don't like that they're winning or whatever. But they don't just, the point about culture is if you see something you like, don't complain about it. Take the parts you like it, incorporate it into your culture and live it and thrive.
This is, I think, a problem with, the people who fantasize about the 1950s again. They're like, well, dating would have been easier for me in the 1950s or something like that, they'll say. And I'm like, it reminds me of the communists who are like, I want communism. And I'm like, you understand that if this was a communist system, you would be the underclass. Like you wouldn't be in the ruling regime. Be
Yeah.
the same people in the ruling regime. They just have more power. It'd be
Yeah.
Trump as head of the communist, dictatorship. This doesn't put you in a better position vis-a-vis where you are now. You just imagine yourself as somebody with a position of power within this new ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think when people reflect back on the 1950s, they don't realize if you're watching this show, you probably would have been one of the nerds playing like Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think that existed yet, but you know what I mean, something like that, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been, captain of the football team, okay?
Yeah.
The girls wouldn't have noticed you. You wouldn't have had an easier time. They were playing with their own difficulties within that time period, as we have within ours.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Although, I mean, again, there's a lot of bad stuff that I thought was really, really, I mean, and it was like, for example, it's just, you might want to cut this out. But yeah, I was like, well, of course, like the thing I can really dunk on is the experience of Black Americans in the 1950s. And I'm trying to find all the stats and I look at their marriage rates and I'm like, oh, okay, well, in the 1950s, 64% of Black women were married, roughly comparable to white women. Marriage rates were higher before the 1960s, with 61% of Black adults married in
And
1960.
their kids born out of wedlock were half the white rate. Today it's like 86% or something.
Yeah, by 2008, only 32% of Black adults were married, a 44% decline from 1960. And there was a much smaller drop among white adults. They just went from 74 to 56. And also fertility and out of wedlock births, way worse after the 1950s. In the 1950s, only 4% of US births overall were out of wedlock. And for Black infants, the rate was approximately 70 to 25% in the early 17 to 25% in the early 1960s.
Note, she misspoke here. I went back and double checked. The amount of Black births in the Americas in the 1950s, where they were born out of wedlock, was less than 5%.
By 2023, 24% of all US births were out of wedlock, but Black infants born out of wedlock soared to 77.3%, up from 25% in 1965. So, I mean, and also like in the 1950s, mental health stigma was severe, but also like people didn't make it a thing. And there's this like,
which is actually mentally healthier than making it a thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think some of that still kind of lingers in Black culture today. Like, I actually think Black culture today is more resilient to the mental health toxicity that we see, especially among white
women,
white urbanized female, gynocracy culture today. And there's this YouTube Shorts channel called Subway Takes where this guy talks about like white people need to stop like calling people autistic and just like sort of medicalizing everything. And he describes like an autistic, like if there were like a Black dude, like a Black household with someone who's autistic, they'd just be like, I don't know, that's Clark, like whatever, like that's just him, like what, like he's doing him, like they just leave it alone. They don't make it a thing. And when I think about all the autism interventions we've had for our kids so far, I mean, I kind of feel like just helping them deal with life in a more normal way is just as effective as like the really expensive therapies we've tried.
You make an interesting point, which is the integration of and sort of destruction of Black culture in the United States since the 1950s. So it can be completely subsumed by the urban monoculture.
Yeah.
It's really broken the idea of a unique Black American identity.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, speaking of Subway Takes, I'll share this with you too. There's another one where this woman it's a Black woman and she's like, no, bring back segregation. Like, I'm serious. Like, one, I want to know if I'm not welcome. And two, also like white food sucks. Like, bring the spice, bring the flavor.
So what's your take?
Bring back segregation.
100% disagree.
Dead at, bring it back. I want to know where I'm not welcome, okay? Put them signs back up, colors only, whites only. Let's do it, all right? Rip the Band-Aid off. Especially for a restaurant. Are you kidding me? Whites only? What do I want to do in there? Okay.
You're saying that the Black excellence.
Absolutely.
The segregation is to get the
colored excellence.
Okay.
Okay. What's the playlist in the whites only spot? They playing Carrie Underwood and Kid Rock. We playing Babyface and Diggable Planets. Ain't no overhead lighting. Black people spend over $1 trillion a year. I would love for the government to force us to spend it on our own people.
This is very good.
Yeah,
I like this a lot.
Like it's sort of this desire to bring back Black exceptionalism as well. And yeah, you're right. This like forced integration that, and therefore cultural erasure, homogenization. Yeah. Like, okay, so now like is Black culture better off now? Like, I mean, it's obviously there were horrible things about like pre-civil rights United States and post-civil rights. I mean, systemic racism is real, well, et cetera. I acknowledge all of that. But okay, so like fertility is worse, out of wedlock births are worse. And, having two parents really does make a difference in kids' outcomes. So, like, this is kind of a big deal. Mental health is worse, even if it's not as bad as white mental health even today. Wealth, too. The black in the 1950s, the black white wealth gap narrowed after World War II. So it actually improved a lot in the
But
50s.
how is it compared
It
to
hasn't
today?
improved, really. It remains entrenched. And median
Wow.
black household income is 58% of white households, which is unchanged since 1953. So despite all the improvements, like, black families aren't more wealthy.
Oh yeah, the black people have it so much better than in the 1950s. That is wild to hear that actually the wealth gap has not improved since 1953.
No.
It actually, I heard her say all this, and I was like, this can't actually be true, right? Like, this doesn't sound true to me. So I decided to start Googling it, and oh my God, it's so much worse than I thought. If you look at this graph by the Washington Post, which is looking at median household wealth adjusted for inflation, since the 1950s, white wealth has gone up about 3x. Black wealth, median adjusted household for household, is approximately the same as it was in the 1950s. Then look at this graph, which is median net worth adjusted by household. Again, you see the same thing, and this time it more than triples for white wealth, and black wealth again goes up by significantly less, maybe 1/10. I then thought to myself, well, okay, maybe in relation to whites, blacks were better off than they are today, and in relation to their relationships or probability of being born out of wedlock, but certainly that's offset by the risk of racial violence. And so then I decided to go back and say, okay, so what was the actual rates of racial violence in the 1950s? And throughout the 1950s, there were 6 people killed by lynchings. That's a lot less than I thought. And so then I was like, okay, well, what if we then move that to all forms of racial violence against black communities over the course of the entire 1950s? You then get 24 victims, which, while a tragedy, is significantly less than I had been led to believe by popular media. The same AI that gave me that 25 number for the 1950s, when I asked it how many blacks had been killed in the past 10 years due to racial violence, it gave me a number of 50 to 100 anti-black hate crime homicides over the last decade. Which, okay, it may be that it is more sensitive what counts as an anti-black murder today than back then. I will give it that. But I think it at least challenges this preconception we have that hate crime has gone significantly down, or racial inequality has gone significantly down over the last 50 years. And what I'll find funny is that I'm sure some people will take this to be a racist point for us to be saying, actually, racism hasn't gone down as much as is publicly perceived, which is just hilarious to me. Also, to put that in context for you, if you take that higher 25 number there, if I contrast that with the number of kids, and I send my kids to a public school every weekday, the number of kids who have died in school shootings in the past 10 years, that number is 188 children have been killed in school shootings in the last 10 years, so since 2024.
No, but culturally, all these things are worse. And this is after, really after like a lot of white colonization, to be honest with you. So also, like, I was looking at that, I was like, oh my God, I've been lied to about the 50s. Like, oh, it was so much more expensive, except, well, we spent like 15% of our income on clothes. So I don't know.
No, but I mean, when I talk about the colonization, this is important to know. Like, within the BLM movement, when they said they were fighting for the like black values being normalized, and they listed among them non-standard marriage structures like polyamory and everything like that. When, if you go back to 1950s, black communities were more pro that stuff than white communities were. Sorry, that was a little unclear. When I said that stuff, I was referring to marriage and traditional family structures. Black culture was more pro traditional family structures than white culture was in the 1950s. Right? So they're using the black community's corpse as a skin suit to push values that are antithetical to the historic nature of these communities, I think shows how much it has been sort of slain and puppeted by the very people who deteriorated it in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I just, again, take what you like from any period of time, from any culture, integrate it into your own, Stop complaining. Like, if you want it, take it. And don't believe the 1950s propaganda, good or bad, basically. Like, if people are talking about the 50s being great, okay, well, yeah, but it wasn't that great. Just think about the hot dog tower, okay? And the jello, the shrimp jello, okay?
Imagine having to eat that. It's like, oh, in the 1950s, women cooked for their husbands and they came home to a warm meal. It's like, yeah, but what did that meal look like? Okay?
No.
I might not be so excited if I knew I had to eat shrimp inside of some weird
That's the
jello
thing,
thing.
is like, so yeah, like okay, yes, we're talking about like, yeah, you had a job, but these were like a huge, there was a lot of industrial jobs. So these are jobs that were so rough that, remember, like Ayla writing about her experience working at a factory before she sort of found her career, was so miserable at her factory job that she would like drink herself into a stupor every night. It was deeply unhealthy, and now it makes sense why. So everyone thinks there's this like fantasy of like, oh, you work all day and then you come home to your beautiful wife who gives you a kiss on the cheek and takes your shoes off, and you put on your slippers and you kick up your feet, and you drink your cocktail as she's making dinner while your kids prattle around. But like, no, you're getting blitzed because you are miserable in your freaking factory job, which is just so boring. And you're not listening to podcasts while you're working on the factory line at all.
Your wife gives you jello with shrimp.
Yeah. Finally, dinner's ready, and like, thank God you're blitzed, because now you need to eat your green jello with infused shrimp, and this is on a special day. Okay,
And
Malcolm.
overcooked steak with ketchup.
It's your birthday. No, you don't get steak on them. No, man, that's very special. Maybe you get some
Canned
spam
beans
with
ham.
ketchup and ham. Yeah, maybe on a special day. But yeah,
No,
like,
actually, proof that 1950s food sucks. If you're like, how bad was 1950s food? The food that in America that we eat on holidays, because it's traditional, it often tries to mimic the food of the past.
Yeah.
That's often like honeyed
Dry turkey.
ham would have been like the peak of food back then, and I find it to be quite boring for me. Or like turkey, and you eat that today and you're like, this is disgusting. Why are we eating this on Thanksgiving? Because that used to be the best of the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. At least the British had it right with like beef Wellington on Christmas. Beef Wellington still.
Beef Wellington's still pretty dope, yeah.
You know what I'd love to try is beef Wellington with wasabi instead of foie gras. Light, just a little bit inside the pastry crust.
I think it could be pretty good, but it's hard to get good wasabi. Like, remember we tried to for our sushi.
I know, the counterfeit market's too big. I mean, I'll stick with blue cheese. I think blue cheese instead of foie gras.
It's a counterfeit market. I just don't, it's hard to get anything that's like even that sort of crumbly wasabi you get at Japanese restaurants.
Yeah, you would even take good counterfeit wasabi, but you can't. Yeah, I don't know why you can't get like restaurant counterfeit wasabi. Yeah. Well,
anyway, love you, Simone. You are an absolute princess. This was a great topic. You did a very good job
talking about it.
Getting into the spiciest of topics.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go with how much worse was it? Yeah, wow. But wow, good job. You have educated me. For dinner tonight, I just want reheats.
Yeah, so we're doing 1 taquito, guacamole, and rendang reheated, sauteed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want rice or no rice? I think I would just say some corn chips. Do you have corn chips? I can open a new bag. If you need more.
Corn chips. I've got corn chips.
Are you sure? Because I can also make some with MSG, sea salt, and corn tortillas if you want. But if you have a bag open, we should.
I've got a bag. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know. Heating the oven right now doesn't sound appealing. It's so hot down there. So hot.
I'm sorry, Simone. You're such a diligent worker on behalf of the family, making me food every night. My meal of the day.
Yeah, that's why it matters. I really don't want. There's the pressure.
I'll never understand how other people eat 3 effing meals in a day.
Yeah, I can't either.
What?
And a snack that's like considered super normal. Apparently, I mean, okay. Who am I to talk? Because I'm eating constantly in this pregnancy. I can't get enough.
Well, good. I mean, you do need to eat with this pregnancy, and yeah, but I mean, I'm a guy, right? Like, I shouldn't be so indulgent.
No, you must be stoic and minimalist, and I don't know whatever it is guys do. Did you do that? All right. That's perfect. Perfect guying. Oh yeah, go get your helmet. Go get your Praetorian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love you.
Love you too.
Is a star that looks big because it's so close. Do you know what the sun is?
No.